This question is, when and where were you born?
Not far from here on Hawthorne Avenue, 2822.
What year?
1916.
Okay.
Radios were just coming into being.
Right.
And that was quite a big event. Anybody who had a radio. And we went around the neighborhood to listen to people who first got radios.
Yeah, that's one of my questions actually. It's like, what was your opinion of the first radio stations?
Well, it's quite interesting because I had built a crystal set, and that was fine. You could get any stations, but all of them. And Richmond didn't have a station then, and we got WLS in Chicago. It's the world's largest store. It was Woolworths. And we got one down in Texas. It was KWKH, W.K. Henderson. He was a grocer down there, and he was arguing about Piggly Wiggly. And he would sign off his station every night, Piggly Wiggly, Piggly Wiggly, hell, Ugly Wuggly. And that was his sign-off, so we always tried to get him on a sign-off.
Who has been your favorite president, or the one that you respected most?
I think the first one I really recall was Hoover.
Is he your favorite?
I don't think I had a favorite. I wasn't into politics to that extent, and I just remember, I think Hoover was the first one I paid much attention to.
How did you know the Cold War?
Yes.
How did that affect your life? Like, was it in any negative ways or positive ways?
No, not a whole lot. Came and went.
Were you aware of, like, communism?
Not particularly. I heard the name, but I wasn't.
I know you couldn't remember, like, any fads, but, like, what were your favorite pastimes? Like, sports or...
When? Now, then?
Then.
Well, I liked to bowl then, and I was into swimming. Anytime I could get to the beach, I did. And we would hitchhike ride to Virginia Beach any opportunity we had, and spend time there. And never had any problem where we stayed. I can remember once, particularly going to Buckrow Beach, hitchhike ride, the three of us, and we met some girls on the beach there, as usual. And we went back to their place, and their parents let us sleep in those houses outside where we changed.
What was it like growing up during, like, the Great Depression? Do you remember?
I remember that fully. I had to quit school. I was going to high school then. I quit high school to go to work. My father had died when I was 2 years old. My mother had 3 children, and I was the middle one. But my brother and I both had jobs in the summer, and mine stayed on for the winter, so I stayed, and I didn't finish high school. Joined National Guards, and I had been to CMTC. That was a Roosevelt initiative to get people get kids out of the street and so forth. Citizens Military Training Camp. You went for a month. I went to Fort Meade, Maryland, and I did it primarily for the money. It was $1 a day they paid you, plus cost for getting up there, and another friend of mine and we hitchhiked a ride to Washington, and then caught the local over to Fort Meade. 30 days up there and got $30 and did the same thing back, so we came back with about $36 each.
Do you remember, like, the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Oh, yes, yes.
What did you think about that?
Well, it pulled us into war.
Right.
And that's the first thing that hits my mind when you say Pearl Harbor. I think we were going in anyhow, but that probably hastened our entry into the war.
Did you?
In fact, I think Congress and our government was all ready for war. That's a strange question, but I had a car about 3 years before I could get a license. But that was all right. They were just beginning to license cars, and I think I was about 15, 14 or 15. I had a Model T Ford.